all seriousness, I'm very excited about this next panel. Finally, we found somebody here in the FinTech world of Georgia who knows me longer than my wife, and that's actually the Attorney General, Carr. And we're very excited he's here. It just goes to show the level of commitment that the state has towards continuing to support this ecosystem. And Attorney General Carr is going to be speaking with Lee Burrows. And Lee is the CEO of Bank Street Partners. But Lee may be most famous for, back in 2011, he became one of the preeminent private equity investors when he invested in TTV Fund 3. So without further ado, I want to turn you over to Lee and Chris. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Well, it's exciting to be here with you, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Lee. Appreciate it.
You've got a great deal of perspective to offer based on your history with the Georgia Department of Economic Development. So we will hear a little bit about that. I've got a few prepared questions, and then we'll see if we have enough time and get a few questions from the audience. As Attorney General, what's your philosophy on fostering a business environment in Georgia that's supportive of FinTech companies?
Well, first of all, thank y'all for having me. And Lee and I want y'all to know that we don't see ourselves as the final speakers of the day. We see ourselves as the opening act for happy hour. So we really appreciate that. You know, having the chance to have been the Commissioner of Economic Development in the state of Georgia over the last 3 years, it was a tremendous honor because there's so much that's going on in this state right now from an innovation standpoint. And when you look at FinTech being right at the center of everything that is exciting in the state of Georgia and in Atlanta, it's been great to be a part of. You know, we had a governor that is very supportive of the industry, very supportive of economic development. We've had a legislature that recognizes the importance of this industry, the importance of innovation, the importance of creating a legal and regulatory and statutory regime that supports companies, that encourages growth, that wants to be a partner in success, that doesn't see business as an adversary. You know, one of the great examples, I think, for FinTech is working with the university system to create a curriculum that's going to support the industry. Because again, as I was mentioning, I think to Nicole before, I mean, as far as the eye can see, this industry is going to be critically important. If you look at FinTech, you look at cybersecurity, you look at mobility, you look at health IT, you look at entertainment, all of that is going on in the state of Georgia right now. So understanding that companies want to come to the state because of the talent base, because of the regulatory environment, because of the statutory environment, because they know that there's a partnership, I've taken that into the Attorney General's office as well. And it is our job, you know, our main job is we are the lawyers for the state of Georgia. We represent the executive branch. We represent the agencies of the executive branch. But I know that companies come here because of that stability. And I know they come here because of that partnership, and I want to continue to do that to the extent that I can. And I appreciate all that y'all have done to create this industry, not only in our state but globally. And I want you to know that the state of Georgia does see you as a partner, and we hope you see us as one as well.
That's a nice transition. You mentioned partnerships, and can you speak to the importance of partnerships and collaboration as you promote this industry's growth in Atlanta and across the state?
Absolutely. There's nothing more important, you know, for success in economic development or anything else than a partnership. I mean, you know this in business. It's a relationship business. It does not matter how, how much television you have or how much, social media you have. At the end of the day, it's being able to look somebody in the eye, know who they are, know that you've got a partner in success, because something's going to happen along the line, and you need to know that somebody's going to be there. Well, I think that's exactly the case, as it relates to economic development or it relates to the state. To be able to have these partnerships and leverage that from both from a where does the industry grow perspective. And remember, government can do some things, but we're never going to be on the front edge. But what we should be working to do is listening to the private sector, saying, what do you need to be successful? How can we foster an environment where you want to locate here, you want to continue to be here, you can innovate, because if you do that, you'll create more jobs, you'll bring more people into the community, all those things which I think are positive. But you can't do it if you're always talking. You can't do it if you lock down. You have to do it as a partnership, whether it's at the state and the local level, it's the private sector, it's utilities, it's the university system, it's technical colleges, whatever it may be. Everybody is in this thing together. And if everybody's at the table, the chance of success is far greater. Because again, y'all are the experts. Everybody in this audience is the experts in FinTech. And we always, I think, took a great deal of pride in saying, all right, tell us what we need to do, and really responding at the speed of business, not responding at the speed of government, which is a little bit slower, responding at the speed of business.
When at the Georgia Department of Economic Development, how often were you able to get the financial institutions themselves and the FinTech companies together? And did you see a cooperative spirit amongst the financial institutions? I know we have it in the FinTech industry.
Well, I think in a number of different ways, and we're fortunate in Georgia. There's actually a group called the Georgia Allies, and there's only so much the state can do with tax dollars to do certain marketing activities and that sort of thing. But we're fortunate to have about 16 companies, which includes the banks, that really came forth and helped us market. So I think that's number one. Number two, I mean, historically in Georgia, the banks have been a part of economic development. So it's a little bit a part of our DNA. It's like with chambers of commerce, whether it's the Metro Atlanta Chamber, Georgia Chamber, or any of the number of chambers that we have around the state. It's just kind of been part of our DNA to have the financial institutions there. Now, I know that it's been a challenge since 2008 for everybody that's been involved in the financial industry, but as we kind of come out, access to capital has always been an issue, and we talk about that in the state of Georgia. And again, that's probably another area that we all want to collectively work to how do we draw more avenues, both, I think from the traditional financial sector and otherwise, where companies can have access to that capital. That is one place that the Department of Economic Development did not get involved in, was matchmaking. But you have a platform to say, hey, let's get together. We've got great groups like the Metro Chamber and others that are drawing attention to what's going on, not just in FinTech, but all the other innovation spaces that we talked about before, and create that buzz. But the financial institutions have always been, I think, a great partner, and particularly right now.
Well, yeah, as you know, financial institutions and, of course, FinTech, one of the hot issues is cybersecurity. Can you talk about some of the state's initiatives in that area?
Yeah, and I think cybersecurity, obviously, again, when we talk about, I think, opportunities, take cybersecurity as a kind of as a separate issue as well. But when you're talking about the companies that we have, again, I think what's so exciting to see what we have in this state is, again, FinTech and cybersecurity, both of which, as far as the eye can see, are going to be issues, and both go hand in hand together. I mean, the core group of FinTech companies that we have, 7 in 10 transactions in North America come through one of our companies. Well, 25% of global revenue is in the cybersecurity space touches a Georgia company. So we're really in a sweet spot. And I think that the philosophy that we have in the state is right. I mean, you've got to have a partnership at the federal level. We have an interest in protecting particularly consumers and that sort of thing at the state level, but it shouldn't be a game of gotcha. Mm-hmm. And the Department of Law has, as I talked with my colleagues that were there, making sure that if there have been data breaches, that we have always supported kind of more of the one-stop shop, make sure that we've addressed it at the federal level. We want to preserve our right, if there's a data breach here. But more importantly, how do we create an environment where we're communicating, where we are going to continue that innovative spirit, that we are not punitive in nature. There are times where obviously the laws have to be followed, but there's also some discretion, I think, that government agencies often have. And where I think you've seen in the state of Georgia, it has been much more pro-growth, pro-business, pro-innovation than some other states. And I think we're going to continue to see that. It only makes sense because, again, we're so proud of the innovation that we have and the companies that we've had in the state right now, and what's going on in Midtown Atlanta is phenomenal.
I'm going to ask one more follow-up question of the Attorney General regarding cybersecurity. And after that, we're going to open it up to the audience so the microphones can kind of begin coming down and getting ready to accept questions for Attorney General Carr. I think we've got him for about 10 more minutes up here, and I want to, as I said, I'll ask one quick follow-up question, then we're going to turn it out to the audience. What factors influence the Attorney General's office in a decision to investigate cybersecurity or data breaches?
Sure. Well, I think that there's a number of different things. One is, do we have jurisdiction? There are some of my colleagues around the country that have been a little bit more aggressive than others, and I'm 3 months into the job, and I certainly am trying to get my arms around what the right philosophy is. But one, again, do we have jurisdiction, or is it better at the federal level? Number one. Number two, Is it an example of something that was intentional or grossly mismanaged? And if so, is there a behavior change that needs to occur versus a punitive action? One of the things, take data breach out, just talk about, we have the Consumer Protection Unit, which is part of our department, and its job is to protect the interests of the consumers of the state, generally speaking, where we have intentional fraud or misrepresentation of a product or a service. Well, there are examples. Volkswagen is a great example. That they just did something flat out wrong. They did it intentionally. You can talk about why that happened with fuel economy standards, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, that was something that was intentional. But there are often times, and I've seen this just again in the 3 months I've been involved in it, where maybe there's a business practice that is legal but not preferred by a particular attorney general, or there's a situation where something wasn't passed through the legislative process that an attorney general would have preferred to have passed, and then use the authority of the state to maybe go and change behaviors. Well, again, I'm not so sure about that's the appropriate way to do it. Again, if something's legal, it's legal. If there is a behavior change that needs to occur, then I think having that conversation is one thing. But then to say, hey, we want to change behaviors, and we're going to ask for $50 million in punitive damages, I think that goes a little bit out of bounds for kind of the way that I see things. So again, that goes back to the philosophy of the state and the philosophy of where we're coming at things. And I think collaborative partnerships, talking through issues when they come up, you've got somebody that doesn't see you as the enemy, but you're willing to have a good, honest conversation with.
Do we have any questions from the audience?
Thank you. If you trace back some of the best success stories in the FinTech world in Georgia, you can actually find some forward-thinking legislation. I'm thinking back in the late 80s around credit cards, and more recently, Ground Floor, a company that relocated from North Carolina specifically because of some legislation. With that in mind, I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are around the whole notion of the special FinTech charter, whether at the OCC level or something from a differentiation point at the state level.
Can you say it again? I missed part of that, the second half. Do I have an opinion on?
The OCC charter, the special purpose charter for FinTech companies?
I got to be honest, that is not something I'm as familiar with.
Okay.
But I'd like to learn more about that from you.
Okay. That's,
if I can grab your card afterwards,
absolutely,
that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, we have another question over here.
Hi, good afternoon. Morgan Clemens, thanks for joining us. I previously worked at the Georgia Department of Banking as an enforcement attorney and now am in private practice. My question is, how do you what is the process with respect to having the cooperation at the higher level, either whether it's with legislators or lobbyists or just generally higher up with the commissioners in government, for that cooperation to trickle down to the individual employee? I don't necessarily think it's an issue with respect to the Georgia Department of Banking, which has either through pushing through housekeeping bills or with the merchant acquirer business or other things where they've shown innovation. But in other states at the government level, there has been difficulty in permitting the actual individual employee either to understand the innovation and to want to push that through, or if not an issue of understanding, for the individual employee to just not care because they're just trying to check a box. So how do you get that cooperation and interest in innovation to trickle down to the individual employee when we're talking about licensing or regulation and compliance?
Well, I think that's a great question. And again, that goes a matter of philosophy as well. And from my standpoint, I'm more of an inclusive, bring everybody together type of person. And I think at the end of the day, it goes back to what I was saying to Lee. I'm a relationship person. I believe that it matters to bring groups together, and where there are opportunities to work together, let's do it. And making sure that we have associations at the table, making sure that you have practitioners at the table, and from our perspective, whether it was at economic development or even at the Department of Law, it's including everybody who is the decision maker, and not excluding those so that they're not, getting an opportunity to have that first hand experience. So we're very open and continue to be. One of the things that we're going to pride ourselves on at the Department of Law is high-quality work product, but also high-quality customer service. And so I want to make sure that where there are innovations that we're trying to stay on the cutting edge as well. Now, that is sometimes, again, difficult. Again, government is never going to stay up on all the innovations that are going out there, but we can have communication. And communication is the key, particularly when you're dealing with the innovation that is occurring with your companies and with what's going on, like I said, in this ecosystem that we've got in Atlanta. Does that answer your question? Good? Okay, great.
As you continue to ask questions, it's really hard to hear up here. There's kind of an echo, so we get it double. If you can speak somewhat slowly, we can better understand what you're saying.
Sure. So, over here. With the consideration of gaming in the state, and we're at a FinTech conference, what regulatory changes would you see being necessary within the state beyond just the passage of the gaming bill for the state to really become kind of a pro and healthy supporter of the gaming industry?
Being a respectful individual who believes that there are three branches of government and the legislative branch is handling the gaming bill, I don't want to prejudice our office because we will have to defend whatever is passed by the legislature and signed by the governor. And that being said, I know that from a gaming perspective or a resort destination bill that's out there right now, there's enabling legislation that's being discussed, and it would be, as I understand it, a constitutional amendment. So if that's the path that it goes down and the people of Georgia choose to vote for it, then by all means, I certainly wouldn't want to stand in the way of that at all. But the debate is going on right now, and I think it's going to continue to go on. It seems to be one of the main issues that the legislature is dealing with.
All right. Well, Chris, it's a great honor to have you here today, and I think you can tell Chris has got a great open-door policy. I think his experiences from the Georgia Department of Economic Development are really going to serve this industry well, serve him well, and we really thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.